Damn DSLR owners. So hello, San Diego Media Pros. How you doing? My name is Tom Keliinoi. I'm the executive producer of the What's on Draft show. It's a show about beer, and it's recently been syndicated on the soon-to-be-launched OTT network Drink TV. My personal goal has always been to get this show syndicated on some kind of network, whether it's something big like Netflix or a smaller OTT thing like the one we ended up getting. So I have achieved that goal, but it took a long time to get to that point. A lot of producing web content for free and just kind of figuring it out. So I'm going to kind of just take you chronologically through how I got to the point where I had a piece of content, like he said, that I was able to monetize. Everything leading up to our syndication, and hopefully there will be some useful information hidden somewhere in my presentation. No promises though. So I was born and raised here in San Diego. I've always enjoyed making videos. My first job, in fact, as a teenager was making videos for my mom's church, New Break. I went to Mesa. Hey, what's up? And I transferred to Cal State Fullerton. When I was a sophomore in college, I started making like comedy sketches with my friends and just putting them on YouTube. You can still watch them all if you want to on hotdamntv.com. They're not good. The production value is terrible. They're not that funny either, so watch them at your own risk. I graduated film school in 2009, which meant two things. First, Arnold Schwarzenegger's signature is on my bachelor's degree, which is really weird. But also, the job market was crap. So my first job out of film school was delivering pizzas for Round Table in Rancho Bernardo, living with my mom. That was cool. Eventually, a connection with a fellow alum from Cal State Fullerton got me a job as a production assistant on a Bravo show, which led to working on Top Chef, which led to working as a camera utility on the Universal lot on another talk show, and so on. I worked on shows in LA for like 5 years with the goal of trying to be a camera operator and just working as a camera operator all the time, but it's, it's a grind out there. I stopped making mediocre comedy sketches in 2012 and started making, instead, a mediocre web series about craft beer called Crafty. Since I was mostly working on reality shows at the time, I kind of tried to structure Crafty as sort of an unscripted reality show, kind of like Top Chef, to the best of my ability. I did it with my friends Grant and Aaron. We made like 12 episodes in total. We ended up doing a shopping pilot with a brewery up in Agoura Hills called Ladyface. The pilot didn't go anywhere, and Crafty was kind of dead in the water at that point. The only good that came of it was I got my friend Aaron, who I worked with on the web series, a job here in San Diego in the craft beer industry. But I wasn't in San Diego at the time. I was still in LA. And fast forward to 2014, I was still in LA, and I was really bummed about it. Like, I didn't like LA. It's not that fun. I lived in the valley. I lived in the shitty part of the valley, so that's why I didn't like it. But I was up there, and I was discouraged that Crafty didn't go anywhere and the pilot didn't go anywhere, but I still wanted to pursue this idea of making a show about craft beer because it's such a raging trend, and it just kept getting more popular. And I noticed that it was pretty underrepresented in popular media for some reason. So I'm going to show you just like a quick sizzle reel from Crafty, or part of one, to give you some context.
Cilantro. Today we're at Stone Brewing Company,
Ladyface Ale Company,
Mother Earth Brew Co.,
Hangar 24 Craft Brewery,
Ballast Point Brewing Company,
The Brewery in Orange County, Clairemont Studios at LA Beer Fest.
Obviously, we've got a lot of ground to cover here, babe.
We went through a big expansion this year. We want to get really good beer to more people.
I'm Mike James from 5secondfilms.com. I would like you to watch me brew a batch of my holiday spice beer. I like it when people watch.
Hey, welcome to Iron Fire Brewing Company. As you can see, we are very far from opening.
As far as actually getting construction done, that all tends to go pretty quick. The hard part's getting the proper permitting,
Greg, how does it feel to finally be up and running?
I think the most exciting part is actually getting to go out to a bar, see your tap handle, and order your own beer.
We're here with Mitch Steele, brewmaster of Stone Brewing Company. How are you doing, Mitch?
Great, how are you?
How do you stay true to your small craft beer roots when you've got such a big operation going?
The CEO of Founders Brewing, Mike Stevens, recently said in an interview that he wouldn't want to be in a startup brewery right now. Do you agree with that?
There's an awful lot of craft brewing companies in San Diego. Do you think that that's a good thing or a bad thing?
It's good for the consumer. It's bad for people looking to start a brewery.
Cedar is definitely an uncommon choice for brewing. It's usually oak. What gave you the idea to put that in? All right, let's get this tasting underway.
This is the beginning. This is Stone Levitation Ale.
The dark one there is the Black Marlin Porter.
So this one here is our 5150 IPA.
The next is the Take Her Home Triple.
Definitely not a beer for beginners. It's got a very full body, almost umami in its satisfaction of my taste buds.
Lee Chase, the proprietor and the original head brewer at Stone, is my mentor. So we brewed it actually in honor of him.
All right, so you get the idea. Cool. It's really neat. Thank you. That was crafty. The sizzle reel makes it look kind of exciting and fun, but it was kind of underwhelming for a number of reasons. If you watch a full episode, which you still can, they're all still live if you want to. The production value wasn't amazing. The editing wasn't that amazing. Again, the sizzle reel looked cool, but there wasn't enough B-roll, and it was kind of boring. I think I'm my own worst critic, but we shot primarily on a Sony HVR Z1U, which still used magnetic tapes. Remember those? Those are cool.
I'm selling one of those, by the way.
Yeah.
I gave mine away. If you buy his Z1U, I'll throw in a UVW baby.
Yeah, there you go. I got a bunch of DV tapes. You can just have them. So yeah, we had this old Sony. We used a pirated version of Adobe Premiere, and we used YouTube as a delivery platform because it's free. Full episodes ended up being about 15 minutes long, and we exported everything as FLV and 1080 HD, but the bit rates were low, and it was kind of a rough draft to what we're doing now with the What's on Draft show. It was just kind of amateur, and it was a stepping stone to where we are now. So sucking at something is the first step towards being sort of okay at something. And so, but for my purposes, I disparage my Sony Z1U, but the gear didn't really matter for web, at least not for my purposes. If you're producing for web, and especially if you're doing something just as proof of concept, which is kind of what we were doing, the gear didn't matter at all. Especially now, you can use your phone to shoot something for proof of concept. If you have like specific delivery specifications that you have to hit, and you have a certain chroma subsampling that you have to hit and a bit rate that you have to hit, then you have to hit it. But if you're just doing proof of concept, it doesn't really matter. I know David Lynch would lynch me for saying that, but like most consumers don't really care, I don't think. I mean, the Douglas brothers made a feature film on an iPhone 6, and they won a bunch of awards for it, so what are you going to do? So all those things, like the creative aspect and the technical aspects of the show, I was not super impressed with, and I think that's why I didn't go anywhere. But the thing that stood out to me about it is that it's not particularly unique. If you go on Instagram or YouTube or Vimeo nowadays, chill dudes who just want to drink beer and try every brewery in America is like a dime a dozen. We were a dime a dozen when we were doing Crafty. And so when I was developing and executing What's on Draft, I wanted to change my approach to it. And so I just completely changed my approach and the format and really my life to make it more conducive to making interesting media. There's a book from the 90s called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by two guys named Al Rees and Jack Trout. And it's a little dated. It's about marketing, and there's no mention of like Facebook or Twitter or all the things you use now for marketing, but there's a lot of timeless wisdom in it as it relates to marketing in general and sort of standing out. And one of the things they talk about in the first couple chapters is the value of being first. Say like it's better to be first than to be better is what they say in the book. And so the reason I say that is because everybody remembers who's first. Like the example they give is Charles Lindbergh. Everybody remembers Charles Lindbergh because he was the first person to fly across the Atlantic solo. Who was the second person to do that? No, nobody cares is the sad answer. He did it faster and he did it with less fuel, but nobody knows his name. Everybody knows Charles Lindbergh's name. Nobody knows the guy who did it better. So that's kind of their example that they give. As I just pointed out, chill dudes who love craft beer and just want to check it all out all across America are a dime a dozen. So I'm obviously not going to be the first person doing that. I wasn't even the first person doing it 5 years ago when I did Crafty. Pardon me. Beer burps. Yeah, I wish. I should have brought beer. I apologize for not bringing beer, by the way. But what these guys in this book talk about is creating a category in which you can be first. So like if you're a hairdresser and you want to make a podcast about Dungeons and Dragons, you're not going to be the 100th person even to make a podcast about Dungeons and Dragons because so many people have done that. But maybe you're the first hairdresser who's done it. And so maybe you play through a campaign while you're styling someone's hair and you make a podcast about it. I don't know. You're the first person to do that specific thing, and then you have a category where you're first. For our purposes with the beer show, I started structuring my life in a way where I could call myself the first commercial brewer who's also a filmmaker. So there's lots of home brewers who are filmmakers, but to my research, I couldn't really find anyone who was doing it professionally who was also making films about it. So basically what that meant is that I left LA, I got a full-time job here as a brewer. I worked that job for 1.5 years while I was developing a What's on Draft show. Now this course of action presented a few challenges, not the least of which is that it's really hard to get a job as a brewer in San Diego because everybody wants to do it. It's like being a chef in New York or trying to go to LA and be a DP. It's like very competitive. And so it's hard to get in. And getting a job at a good brewery is even more competitive. So the brewery that I ended up working at, it's not like the best brewery in San Diego, but they actually have a pretty bad reputation. But it was good enough for me to like learn how to brew and be in the industry. I don't work there anymore, so I can talk about them like that. My friend Aaron, who I mentioned earlier as getting a job in the beer industry here in San Diego as a result of the Crafty show, had, at this point, 2014, been promoted to head brewer, and he needed an assistant. So that was me. I left LA, and I started working for him, and now I was a brewer filmmaker. And I was, not a home brewer, a commercial brewer. I was working for a company in San Diego making beer for a living. And I think that perspective, as an industry insider, ended up being key in making my media more interesting and marketable and unique. So yeah, again, to recap everything leading up to What's on Draft, over the course of like 6 or 7 years, I made comedy sketches that went nowhere. I made a web series about beer that went nowhere, a pilot that went nowhere. I was trying really hard to be a camera operator in LA, and that didn't really work either. But I just kind of took pieces of all these things that worked and got rid of everything else. And I did my best to create a category in which I was first. And I just recorded with whatever gear I could afford, and I just kind of slowly improved it and upgraded it over time. What's on Draft? What's on Draft is the reason why I'm here speaking tonight. What's on Draft is why people know who I am. It's why Michael invited me here tonight. It's the piece of media that I've created that was marketable enough to be sustainable. And now that you know my entire life story, let's talk about my media. What's on Draft is a brewer-produced show about craft beer and craft beer culture. Format is live-action video, mostly unscripted. The genre spans comedy, travel, documentary segments. Some episodes are as short as 6 or 7 minutes, and some are as long as 16 or 17 minutes. We've divided this content into 2 seasons, which are released weekly when the season is live. It's based in San Diego mostly, but we do travel segments in other parts of the country and other parts of the world sometimes as well. To give you a little bit more of an idea of what it is, and assuming that most of you probably haven't seen it before, I'm going to show like 2 minutes of a clip. Hey, it's muted.
Through, but first, there's one more Kickstarter reward that has not yet been fulfilled. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
you go, buddy.
Oh man, that is like a neon highlighter.
So you get to pick anywhere on the car to put the logo except for the windows.
Right.
The top of the S is going to be fucked up. No, it wasn't supposed to be a circle, right?
No, not really.
That was anticlimactic and disappointing. So let's go inside and have some sake.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.
Transition.
Ooh.
I know. The first one he did was 9.5%.
Ooh.
But we want to serve it in pints, so we brought it down to 7%. It's literally just 2-row lactose coffee.
All right, yeah, that's fine.
Super straightforward. You get the sweetness from lactose.
Yeah.
There's a little vanilla in there too.
Do you guys ever put it on nitro?
We have, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I actually like it more than CO2.
Have you heard of McLeod up in LA?
Yeah, I watched your episode about it.
Sweet.
Every one of these is cask conditioned. Our mentor said we would stand out from other breweries if we did cask. I mean, all breweries do cask, but we wanted to be the main thing for us. So we set the brewery up with 6 beer engines, and you know, we just did the whole thing the way it would be in the old days.
What are we doing with these? We're throwing them in the...
I think we're just throwing them in the back.
Oh, I feel like we're working too hard.
It's hard to do when you have a beer in your hand. Dragging the hops everywhere. I mean, we'll probably rinse them before we put them in, but maybe not. So these are the lupulin glands, and they contain all the essential oils and alpha acids. And then the outside is just to protect it. So you want to make sure that the inside, where you can see the yellow pollen, is the healthiest. The yellow pollen has all the resins and essential oils and alpha acids, beta acids, and that's where that good bitterness comes from, is the actual pollen. Boom. That's what your beer is, folks, right here.
You get the idea. It's a show about beer and craft beer lifestyle. Those are some unscripted segments that we did. Oh, maybe it is loading. No, maybe not. Those are some unscripted segments that we did. We also do some narrative segments on the show, centered around a fictional brewery in San Diego called Sleepaway Brew Co., which is branded as the chillest microbrewery in all of San Diego. If you want to check that out, you can on our website, whatsondraft.tv, as well as the full episodes of these clips that I showed you, but that's good enough for context for now. Technical aspects of the show, I use this camera for most everything, the Panasonic GH4. It's a great little camera body. I spent maybe $500 on lenses. I got a Metabones adapter so I can use all these old legacy lenses. I had an old Nikon, 40-year-old Nikon lens from an SLR that I got as a gift when I was in high school, and I use an adapter and I use that lens all the time. All in all, I spent maybe like $8,000 on gear before I started working on the show. $1,000 of that was the editing bay itself. I had a friend of mine put it together and I paid him in beer because brewers get free beer, so that's a currency that I used a lot for the show. I went with PC just because it's cheaper. Final Cut is great software, and I used Final Cut when I was doing post-production at NBC.com in LA, but to get a bay with enough horsepower that I needed, if I was going to get a Mac, it would have been like 3 times as much money, and I'm not wealthy, so I went with PC. I'm not saying PC's better, but it is. So, So $8,000, not a lot of money for some people, but a lot of money for me because when I moved down here from LA, I was broke as a joke. So how did I finance the show? Financing the show was difficult because while we did eventually launch a crowdfunding campaign, we couldn't launch a campaign until 2016 because when we started planning things and laying the groundwork for season 1, nobody knew who we were. So, you know, Crafty had been dead for a while and we hadn't really established ourselves in the beer community yet. So, you know, our eventual goal again was syndication, but I knew it was going to take a while to get there. So, the short answer of how I financed the show is I kind of leveraged my entire life to support it. I lived on my friend Aaron's couch for like almost a year, saving up money. I stopped going out. I only drank beer if it was free, which was all the time because I was a brewer. But I only bought groceries that were on sale. I used my credit card. I asked my friends and family to buy me like lenses for Christmas, and they didn't. But I just lived extremely frugally for like a year. So all of 2015, I just kept my head down and worked my brewing job, but I was also writing, planning, getting a website together. And at the end of 2015, I started shooting footage for What's on Draft. We released our first episode in February of last year, and we kept releasing episodes every Monday until June of last year. So yeah, initially financing was credit cards, leaving LA, couch surfing, selling all my stuff, and just centering every aspect of my life around the show. As you may have guessed, I have no children and I'm not married. So this very extreme level of full immersion for funding a show may have varied success, but it's what I did. So again, I knew we needed to do crowdfunding if this show is going to get past this initial season 1 batch of content that we've made. I considered Patreon, which a lot of my friends use. My friend Chris Allison from Toonhole in LA uses it. My friends here in San Diego with San Diego Beer Talk Radio use Patreon, but I didn't think it would work for us. So I decided to do one precisely timed Kickstarter to keep the project alive and get from season 1 to season 2. When I was planning the crowdfunding campaign, I knew we needed about $25,000 if we were going to do it again, another season. But I also felt that the best method for a successful campaign was for it to coincide with season 1. So what that meant is that I ran a crowdfunding campaign while I was putting full episodes out, which was really fun. From late May to the end of June last year, I was simultaneously running the crowdfunding campaign and putting out new episodes, editing, publishing, and promoting them online. This was a real bummer to do, and it was probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. But I also feel that doing it this way was pretty key to the success of the crowdfunding campaign because putting a new episode out every week made the campaign relevant again every week. You normally get a big push at the beginning of a campaign and a big push at the end, and then in the middle there's this plateau where no one cares about your Kickstarter. But the episodes helped offset that enough for us to be successful. It was definitely kind of the defining moment for the show, and I knew that this 6-week period would make or break us. And full disclosure, if it wasn't successful, I absolutely did not have a plan B. So, yeah, I just would have been completely leveraged to the hilt on a dead project with no way to really monetize it. So there's probably a better way to do crowdfunding than the way I did it, and I would certainly urge you all to find that any other way to do it. But you know, that's how I did it. Also, side note, there was another crowdfunding campaign that went on right before us for Suts County, which I think some of you guys worked on. Yes, and that wasn't successful, which sucks because the first Suts County was really good, but it was a kind of a reality check for us too, and we ended up lowering our goal for the Kickstarter. I think Sheldon made like $19,000 before he suspended it. We were asking for 25. We lowered it to 17,500. If we hadn't done that, we wouldn't have gotten anything because we were doing an all or nothing campaign. We only ended up making like 18.5 grand. So if we had stayed at that initial 25 grand, we would have been screwed. So now, July 2016, I have 17 grand after Kickstarter takes their large fee out of it. And that 17 grand needs to do 3 things. Fund an entire second season of the show that needs to be better than the first season. Fulfill all the remaining Kickstarter rewards that haven't been fulfilled. And cover my basic cost of living until May of this year. I really had to stretch those dollars. At this point, I had quit the brewery. I don't know if I mentioned that. I quit last March. As soon as we started putting episodes out for season 2, it became very clear that I wouldn't be able to have a full-time job and do this the way I was doing it. It was very time-consuming to do the show, and I knew that that was going to be the case moving forward. So I knew that the 17 grand would also have to pay my rent for that period of time. So as I said before, I handle logistics, shooting, post, social media, and pretty much everything else. But I'm also wearing multiple hats in the field when we're shooting. I made a short video for a crowdfunding campaign to show people how I do it. I'm going to show like a minute or two of it. Bear in mind, it's made for a specific audience. It's made for an audience that doesn't understand how media is made. So it's kind of simple, but it gets the point across.
Hey guys, it's Tom from What's on Draft. I wanted to make a quick little video kind of explaining our filmmaking process with the show and how we put the episodes together. So basically for a flight tasting episode, we'll come in, we'll have 3 cameras. Either Aaron or myself will operate one. We'll hire somebody or bring a friend to operate the other camera, and then we have a GoPro for our wide shot.
A mark, B mark, and GoPro you got.
You got both of those GoPro. So there's 3 camera angles, and then we're each wearing wireless microphones. So I'll come in, set up all that gear, and then if I'm hosting, I'll sit down and we'll get started. Alpine, take 1 mark. Boom. Have to constantly keep an eye on all the gear, make sure everything's running, make sure everything's going because I'm the camera assistant, even though I'm the host. Is that still rolling? Yep. I might have a record limit. I'm pretty sure I heard the shutter, so I don't think we missed anything. Are you rolling on the Tascam too? Sweet. B-cam, mark. The flight tasting episodes usually end up being about 10 minutes, but we usually talk for about an hour and a half. So once we're done with all that footage, I have to go home, synchronize all the footage together. I have to sync the sound from these 2 cameras with the sound from that camera. So I go through and I look at the waveform and I look for the clap.
I knew that you had to, I just didn't know why.
And then I have to condense it all down to 10 minutes and then just slowly piece it together through the editing process. And that's really the most time-consuming part, is the editing. Now, obviously on a show with a big budget, you have your production coordinator, you have your producer, you have your director, you have your camera operator, and you have your video editor, and you have your host. But when we do What's on Draft, I'm doing all those things simultaneously. It's one of the ways we're able to keep costs significantly lower, which is why no one's really done a show like this with a small budget like ours, because a normal show would have to hire 6 different people to do those 6 different things, but I'm doing it all myself. Yeah, why don't you go camera left a little bit? You're gonna have to adjust your focus though. Just make sure I'm in focus, it's very important. And I also have to be constantly taking story notes in my head while I'm talking to the person, because I need to get B-roll footage later of what we're talking about so that I can overlay that footage on top of the interview, so it's not just boring interview footage. So we were fortunate enough to get the building next to us about a year ago. We have some sour barrel aged beers over there. Oh, really awesome. Knocked out right into the barrels and fermented in the barrels next door.
Excellent. Yeah, very nice. Yeah.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. Anyone who is a video shooter, you know, you do jack of all trades stuff. That's just how we did it specifically in these flight tasting episodes that we would do. I only use music from Free Music Archive when I'm doing it, or my friend at Chris Allison's band, Lord Loud. I have my camera operator friends, Chris Cochran, Adam Jarris, and Kurt Olson, who are like camera guys that I've worked with who have been super helpful, but I only ask for favors when I like absolutely needed it so that the favors would last longer. I met my web designer on Tinder, and she made me like a really awesome WordPress website for free. That method of recruiting people to help you with your show might not be replicatable, but that's one thing that I did. Her brother also did some graphic design work for us for a really awesome rate. But one of the main ways that I got most bang for my buck with this particular project was kind of a byproduct of being an industry professional in the beer industry. When we're shooting episodes of the fictional brewery, or if we're shooting B-roll, I had pretty much unfettered access to like breweries whenever I wanted. A brewery is a very unique looking space which lends a higher production value to visual media, but it's also an extremely dangerous workspace. There's a reason why when you go to a beer tasting room, there's an area where you're not allowed to go as a customer. It's because there's boiling liquid and high pressure tanks and really toxic chemicals. If I was just a filmmaker who wanted to go in there and make a short film about beer and shoot inside a brewery, they would want all these waivers and insurance. They'd probably want safety training for any of the crew that went in there. They would want, there would be so many hoops I would have to jump through, and it would have been so much more logistically challenging and expensive. But they knew that I knew how to navigate that workspace because I'd spent the past year and a half working as a brewer. And so they just let me kind of do whatever I want. That obviously made shooting B-roll and scripted episodes a lot easier. But taking that kind of idea a little bit further, I also just started looking at like every aspect of my life and thinking like how I could make it into an interesting thing for the show. My girlfriend was living in Paris for like a year, and so I did a travel episode in Paris. I found a round trip ticket for like $400 on some crappy European airline. And I shot a travel episode in Paris. I had to go to a wedding in Kansas City, so I shot a brewery in Kansas City. I had when we were doing our crowdfunding campaign, we were late on one of our reward fulfillments. Like 20 or so people had given us like $100 each to put their name or their logo on our company car. But my car had died, and my mom had given me this crappy Civic. And so we just kind of turned it into a segment for, you saw like a part of it with the guy putting the sticker on the thing. We just turned that into a segment for our season 2 premiere, and it ended up being one of the highest viewed episodes of the season. People really liked it. If you go into the parking lot, you'll see this goofy Tokyo Drift wannabe green car. Like that's my daily driver. Like I don't have another car. I can't afford another car. I again leveraged everything for the show. The show's boss. Online delivery. Like I said, release episodes weekly. Starting in January for season 2. Starting in January of this year, we released 16 episodes through May 15th with a 1-month hiatus in the middle. I elected to use Vimeo Pro as a hosting service instead of YouTube for What's on Draft, instead of like what we did for Crafty. I don't know, it's just personal preference mostly. But season 1, I did the flight tasting episodes 1080, 30 frames per second, and I did the scripted episodes 4K, 24 frames per second. I don't know why I did it like that. I just do everything 1080, 24 frames per second now. Shot on the GH4, 100 megabits per second, but I didn't have, and I still don't have an external recorder, so the chroma subsampling is 420, not 422. But again, for my purposes, that didn't matter. Final episodes I published as H.264 MP4 files at 50 megabits per second. So the final files are like 5 gigs, give or take. Episodes would come out Monday, but I would usually upload the final video file like late Sunday night, because I didn't have picture lock on the finished episode until then. I don't recommend working with such razor thin margins. It's really stressful, but that's how I did it. Once it was live, I would post it on our Facebook page for What's on Draft, and I would boost it for anywhere from $10 to $100, usually locally here in San Diego. Sometimes I would do one that was targeted to San Diego and Los Angeles, or like major beer cities like Portland and Denver and San Diego and New York. Or in the case of the Kansas City episode, I would do like specific to that episode. Facebook ads is complicated and confusing, and we weren't able to outsource that part of our marketing. But I would definitely recommend that you do if you use Facebook ads, because it's just like this just has like a steep learning curve, and I didn't really get it. I actually know someone who we're going to use moving forward, her name's Chloe. If you guys want someone who can help you with Facebook ads, she's great. I kind of consulted with her for like an hour, and she tried to teach me how to do it, but it's just kind of a weird learning curve thing. So moving forward, we're definitely going to hire her and just have her do it. We also posted our episodes on the largely popular website Reddit, which sometimes was great and sometimes was terrible. It's really, sometimes they like you and sometimes they don't. I don't really know how Reddit works, but
nobody does.
Yeah, sometimes they'd be like, they upload, this is amazing, how did you do it? And sometimes they'd be like, this sucks, you're gay, and then download it. Thanks, internet. Don't read the comments. That's the other thing about online media. Just never read any of your comments. One other thing we did for like viral marketing is we created a pinup calendar called the Sexy Brewers of San Diego, which, as you can imagine, was pretty much all men. But we did that at the end of last year, and that was right before we launched season 2, so that it ended up being like we got a decent amount of press out of it and some radio interviews and stuff. And we also raised $2,000 for charity, so that was cool too. So, yeah, I was in the calendar actually, because we had an extra page in the back. I'll show you later. So now season 2's over. I've posted all my video content. I've spent all my Kickstarter money, and I've maxed out all my credit cards. So how do I monetize this content is like the real question. We could have done product placement or direct sponsorships. We chose not to because we were trying to figure out exactly what we wanted the format and the tone and the structure of the show to be, apart from money, which was great because we had creative control, but you know, maxed out credit cards, so that was a bummer. Syndication, again, always seemed like the only financial solution for this particular type of media that made sense to me. Again, I didn't think Patreon would work. The Kickstarter was awesome and definitely necessary, but I also feel like I already did a Kickstarter and I don't want to like do it again. I kind of feel like I asked all my friends for money because it was mostly like beer industry people who helped me out, and brewers are all broke, so like I can't do it again. So syndication really seemed like kind of the only solution that would make sense, and we were certainly just reaching out to all connections that we had. Anyone I know who worked on a thing, if I knew somebody who worked at Hulu, or if I knew somebody who worked at, if I heard about an OTT network, I would try to reach out. The one that we ended up going with for our season 1 content was actually somebody who reached out to us. We did an episode about McLeod in Los Angeles, and the CFO of the network saw it and shot me an email. That's pretty much it. That's how we got our syndication. So this entire project was essentially a 3-year gamble, initially with my own money and then with Kickstarter money and my personal credit lines. And the gamble was that I would be able to create something compelling and interesting and viable that no one else was doing in that particular way. And that a network would see the value in my work before I fell into complete financial ruin and had to move in with my mother again. And it seems to have worked. Barely by the skin of my teeth, but people are now noticing the show. And we're very, very excited about this milestone of syndication that we've achieved. But even beyond that, we also have this body of work that we've created, which has led to opportunities and is continuing to lead to other opportunities. I may work with another media company in LA for a project with the Travel Channel. I've also gotten some freelance work here in San Diego making commercials for local breweries. I did a campaign for Thorn Brewing in North Park. Yeah, that's me, online media, that's what I did.
Now, can you explain the syndication deal?
Yeah, so it's a new network called Drink TV that's launching this year, and it's an OTT network. You guys all know what an OTT network is? An OTT network, it just means over the top network, and so it just means it goes over the top of traditional broadcast, and it's basically just means it's on the internet. They just call it OTT so that they don't have to call it a web series. And so basically there's quite a few of them around, but this one is run by some guys who used to work at I think Hulu and some other places, and they kind of started their own thing, and they basically just starting these kind of different niche networks that are online. They have one called the Warrior Network that's like all military stuff and former vets who like own businesses, and then they have Drink TV, which they're launching, which is like cocktails and spirits and wine and bars and craft beer. So basically, I take all of my content that I've made and I license it to them. I still own it, but they show it on their network.
And they're going to sell spots, probably.
Yeah, and then I get a majority of the commercial coverage money that gets paired with my media. Yeah, I think it's just like they'll put a pre-roll ad in between. They'll add commercial breaks, and they'll put these pre-roll ads and mid-roll ads, and I just make when an ad gets put on my media, I make 10% of that, and they keep.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Good. How long are your episodes usually?
Yeah, the shortest one I think is 6 minutes, and then the longest one is like maybe 17. So they vary quite a bit. I try to hit like 12. I think 17 is a little long, but I think people's attention spans are kind of short. So like if something ends up being less than 10 minutes, I feel like it's fine. the nice thing with doing the first 2 seasons, you know, without anyone really looking over my shoulder, is that I could just kind of make it as long or as short as I wanted. But then I wasn't making money, so.
Is this Drink TV available on the internet where we can see it?
No, they haven't launched it yet. So they're launching it sometime in the next couple of months. They have TV4 Entertainment is the name of the company. They're just in I think, Santa Monica or El Segundo or something.
Okay.
And they have a few of these other niche content networks. They have one that's like about cars. They have one at like the Warrior Network, and then the Drink TV is like their new one that they're launching this year. Yeah.
Will there be a season 3?
Yeah. So that's another sort of way of monetizing it that we're thinking about for moving forward for season 3. Now that we've established kind of our value as a voice in the craft beer industry, we can now approach different breweries and be like, hey, if you give us capital to make season 3, we'll kind of center it around your business, and like your business will become the home base for the show. So that's what we're probably going to do moving forward. We're talking to a couple of different breweries in town about that, but we haven't decided who we're going with yet. So
You'll get rid of fictitious brewery?
I don't know. I kind of like Sleepaway.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. It's actually, Sleepaway is like our most popular episode, I think. We just did this goofy scripted thing, and the fictional ones are the ones people like more, I think, but try to do both.
You mentioned you had done some spots for Thorn. I happened to be cutting a sizzle reel for when it showed that some of those spots were on. Were you responsible for the phone sex ad?
Yeah, the fake.
I watched this show all the way through to figure out what I was going to pull out for the sizzle reel, and honestly, the best part of that half-hour show were those flipping spots. Those
Thanks,
spots
man.
were great.
Yeah, we did a like a fake. Remember phone sex lines when those existed? We did like a fake commercial for this beer, but it's called the Foreplay Belgian Blonde. So it's like dial 1-900 Thorn, and we did it like made it look all VHS, and we had like one of the bartenders.
It's brilliant.
Can you pull it up?
Yeah, it's only a minute long. You guys want to see it?
Yeah, why not? My tail endorses it.
I'll tell you, these spots were the best thing on this sizzle reel that I had. The spots aren't winding up on the sizzle reel, but it was the best part of the show.
They have a live webcast thing that they do. Oh, here it is. 52,000 views. It's like the most viewed video I made.
How much is it?
Are you a craft beer enthusiast looking for a good time? Call 1-900 Thorn Street and give our Foreplay Belgian-style blonde ale a try. Foreplay. Weighing in at a girthy 6.8% ABV, this beer will be sure to wet your whistle. Belgian Pilsner malts and spicy Czech sauce hops are used in this traditional Belgian style, where yeast-derived flavors of pear and apricot blend with floral and spice. Foreplay. Easy drinking. So easy. Deceptively natty with a near 7% ABV. This beer needs spanking. Thorn Street's Foreplay Belgian Blonde. All major credit cards accepted. No checks or CODs. Call now.
Yeah, that's me. That's my time.
Nice work, man.
Thanks, guys.